before they bring the microphone to you, I will announce you once again. So, Stefan is known to film audience here in Serbia, especially for his film Sveta te goljam i Spasenje debnje cvjekada, Svet je veliki spasenje iz ugla, whose screenplay, I believe, is co-written by our fellow citizen Dušan Milić, and the main role is played by Miki Manojlović. This is a very well-known Stefan's film, but for those following contemporary European cinema, Stefan has become something of a social surgeon. And I'm not saying that because you graduated in medicine before film, although you did. But through his recent films like Directions, Rounds, Blaga's Lessons, he has meticulously dissected the systemic fractures of modern Bulgaria and global capitalism, all visible on the very local level. So in his latest work made in EU that you have just seen, Stefan has turned his lens toward the garment industry. The title itself, I think, is a provocation, challenging us to look past the prestige of the European label to see the invisible hands and the relentless noise of the sewing machines and the economic pressures that define the lives of the women inside these factories. Not just the women, but mostly the women we saw work in these factories. So I think that his gift lies in the ability to marry a rigorous visceral film style with an urgent social consciousness, intimate stories and human understanding of his characters. He doesn't just show us a factory, I think. He makes us feel the weight of the shift and the discrimination and life bounded by the lack of opportunities in poor parts of the modern Bulgaria. So Stefan, thank you for joining us. We are honored to have you here, and this discussion is framed like the intersection of cinematic form and the talk of, let's say, social justice. So this is how the questions are going to go, at least what I have prepared in the short script that I've sent to Stefan. So welcome once again. Maybe you can just say a few words before I ask you these difficult questions that I prepared.
They are not so difficult. Come on. No, but you mentioned the film with Miki Manojlović. It was in 2008, so it was 18 years ago. We were much younger and much optimist in this period. Now we are more realistic. Even I'm still an optimist. In one of my previous movie directions that was in Cannes, there was a sentence that became very famous in Bulgaria, that Bulgaria is the country of the optimists because the pessimists and the realists already left. So I'm from the optimist. Yeah, so this was a joke as a beginning.
In your recent films that we've mentioned, Directions, Posoki, you examine a society through the lens of taxi drivers, and then in Krug or Rounds, it's the night shift of patrol policemen, and in Blaga's Lesson, Urocite na Blaga, it is a story about the elderly generation, so to say, about a woman who faces difficulties of the retired population, of the aged population. So why was the garment industry, the textile industry, the next, so to say, patient that you felt the need to examine?
Well, you know, every time there is something personal, the idea of direction of Posoki, the movie, was born on a taxi cab one evening in Sofia when I met a taxi driver who was, let's say, modern philosopher. So from him came this idea. After Rounds and Blaga's Lesson was connected with my family, my father who has Alzheimer, and I was dealing very often, few times, with police officers, and we did Blaga's Lesson mainly as a film dedicated to the generation of our parents, because this generation was the biggest victim of this so-called transition between that started in 89 until today. And for Made in EU, as I mentioned before the screening, I had friends, syndicalist in Bulgaria, very close friends, who was involved in this research of Clean Clothes campaign. So they told me a lot of things about this, and when Clean Clothes campaign published the result of this research, it was a total shock for me, because I was living in Sofia in my balloon, so I doesn't have any idea what is happening in the small towns, in the small villages, mainly in the villages where this kind of factories are existing. So this was the first idea to make something about this. After this, the COVID arrived, and as we joke very often with my co-script writer, there is no bigger screenwriter than the real life. So everything that you saw on the screen connected with the COVID was something that happened. There was one seamstress accused that she was the patient zero in one factory in the north Bulgaria. There was a lot of case of COVID in this kind of factory, because the seamstress, they wanted to hide that they are ill in order not to lose their bonus and their half of the salary. So somehow the reality helped us to do this movie.
And there is a shot at the end of the movie that we just saw with the Made in EU label that is sewn wrongly, so to say. And I think this is like an interesting symbol in the film. On the one hand, this Made in EU garment is made by the workers. I mean, we see these rich people with the expensive garment, but it is being made by the person that serves them. At the end of the movie, she made that piece of garment. But it also says Made in EU, so the title suggests like a seal of quality. It's made in EU, European Union. But we see in your film the dark side of it very explicitly. So the title becomes ironic. And while you were working on the film in your research, how much of a gap have you seen between this European brand image and the reality of the Bulgarian sewing rooms and textile workers?
But you know, I was really one of the most happiest people when Bulgaria joined the European Union in 2007. And I still think that this was a great step for our country. But, you know, when we had our Greek premiere in Thessaloniki Film Festival, there was a guy from the audience. He asked a question and he said, but if I remember, Bulgaria is already 18 years in the European Union, so we are already adult. So maybe now finally it's time that you start to deal like adults. Not to say yes to everything, but has your own voice and the right to criticize. So this is what we wanted to do with this movie. Because when I discovered this research of Clean Clothes campaign in 2019, I was really shocked, because we were a member of this, let's say, club of rich European Union for more than a decade, and it was a shock that somehow Bulgaria, and maybe not only Bulgaria, but also other country in this area, become something like an internal third world of the European Union. And I really, for me, Made in EU was something like a brand for quality, for sustainability, for production clothes, etc. So this was the shock for me, and that's why we did this movie, trying to deal like adults.
This event is also sponsored by the European Union, so you know the criticism with the money of the people that we criticize continues.
Yeah, but this is my first movie that was rejected from the 2 European funds for cinema, from Euroimage and from Program Creative Europe of Media of European Union. So I have the right to criticize. I didn't take money from them.
While I was reading about your film, I saw that the film was shot among other places in Bulgaria and in Rudozem, and this is what we hear in the movie. Even the title of the small town, the name of the small town is Rudozem, which is of course to us in Serbia also familiar. Ruda and Zemlja, Rudozem. It's the same in Bulgaria. So the town, it's a real town, and it's been named by the ore and the earth. So the resources that this town possesses, just like we see in the movie, miners. It's the tradition of the mining town that now becomes a town of the textile industry. And I saw the news from this year that from Rudozem, certain textile industry, a German, I believe, or some huge Bulgarian corporations, I forgot the name, has decided to left the town because the costs are rising, the costs of Bulgarian workers, so they blame it on the workers, and they have to move to Southeastern Asia because it's cheaper out there. So it's interesting.
Very often the real life somehow imitates the art with our movie. But yes, this was something that is happening very often. And the factory that you saw in the movie is in the town of Haskovo, with the interior of the factory. And this was a Bulgarian factory that already collapsed, bankrupted, because they really had something like 20 years they were in the business. But for them it was not possible to survive in the concurrence of Zara, H&M, etc. So it was closed factory, but all the sewing machines were there, so they opened this factory for us in order to shoot the movie.
Just one more question about EU and Bulgaria, what you said, the third world of the European Union. I mentioned Southeast Asia from the news, but it's usually where we place the exploitation of the textile workers. It's in Southeastern Asia, but in your film we see it in back home in Europe. And it's interesting to me and to us in Serbia how the same sentences that we repeat can be, at least we on the left, can be heard in your film, that Bulgaria has become the cheap labor force of the European Union. And that's especially true for the poor regions, just like in Serbia, mostly in the south of Serbia or on Bulgaria. As Dr. Rusev says, what they said to us about communism was all lies, but what they said about capitalism is all true. So I'm interested.
This is my favorite sentence.
It's a great sentence. But how does your film, at least what you think, challenges this, status of we are on the periphery, we are cheap labor force, and this is how it's gonna stay?
But I can call this wild globalization, because for me. It was really strange when we had our world premiere in the film festival in Venice, and at the Q&A after the premiere, it was a pleasure for me that I feel some very beautiful irony in the fact that our movie about the exploitation of the fashion industry has world premiere in Venice, in Italy, the most important country of the fashion. And the strange thing is that some Italian journalists, they told me, but in Italy is the same. In south of Italy, the situation is similar. The south of Italy, they're working for the north. So everywhere there is periphery and not so, let's say, periphery. Like in Bulgaria, it's a huge difference between Sofia and maybe two other big cities, and the rest of Bulgaria. It's like another universe. And that's why we wanted to present this absolutely different reality, this periphery that exists in our country. But it's not Bulgarian phenomenon, it's something that you can see everywhere.
Especially because it's a small town, it also plays the role. Small, poor town that needs these jobs, right?
Yes, because in this small town, the people they don't have a big choice. The option is to stay to work here, or to go to Sofia, or to emigrate, and we wanted to present everything in the most realistic way. The most strange reaction was from the mother of my scriptwriter, co-scriptwriter Gijón Velisavljević. She was also, let's say, some kind of inspiration about this movie, because she spent all her life working as a seamstress in this kind of factory. So finally, she saw the movie and she said, well, yeah, very good, very realistic, but she said, I can say that somehow you presented the reality a bit lighter. And I asked why, and she told me, but you know, it was very often that we had 36-hour shift. And this was the second shock, after the first one that was from the Research of Clean Clothes campaign.
Let's move closer to the film style and film aesthetics. This industry, as we see and as we know, relies a lot, I'm not going to say almost exclusively, but like in your film, most of the workers are women. And
that's why we put one man.
Yeah, you have one man for diversity purposes.
Not exactly.
But in your film, the exploitation in this factor is tied also to the domestic and social pressure that is women face outside of work. And this is where I think you create your character, Eva, that's in the center of this story. So can you comment on her character's arc, so to say, on her story that we see in the film, and also about your work with wonderful actress Gergana Pletňová? How did you form this character?
But of course, everything started with this real case, with the real prototype that happens in this factory in the north of Bulgaria. Of course, after this, we did a lot of script writing and script development, including in one very good script writing program called MFI, Mediterranean Film Institute, that somehow this year also they didn't receive financing, because there is no maybe money for this kind of programs.
Yeah, the war needs to be financed.
Yeah, the war must be. The wars must be financed. But of course, it was a lot of work. First, on the level of the script writing and script development, we did something like a 12 draft. And after, this is usually the way that I'm working, I spent months of rehearsals with the actors, and we discuss a lot. I shoot with a small camera. We watch together. After we go with the actors on the location, we are doing the same. Somehow the film is almost shot one time before the real shooting. And during this work, many things are change. And in the movie, you saw this line that Eva has a brother, the right hand of the owner is his brother. And this was something that was developed during the rehearsals and was proposed by the actors. So somehow I always invite my actors to become like a co-script writer, and I'm really happy with this result.
Our famous director, Gijón Pavlović, taught screenwriting at the Faculty of Dramatic Arts, and he would always say when he reads your script, can these two guys be relatives? Like when they're relatives, the so to say, the drama becomes heightened, and it's really in your movie. This is a turning point when we find out that this guy is her brother.
Exactly.
And then we hear about the background story that is really important. But what I'm interested in, and what I found cinematically interesting is the sound of your film. So there is this relentless noise of the sewing machines in the first part of the film, and it also becomes a character in itself. The hiss of the bus, the routine of these sounds, the monotonous sounds that your character faces, and there is no music in the film. So how did you approach the sound design? What was your aim, so to say?
But first, this is my fourth film without music, and somehow it's okay. I think that if you can do a film without music, that means that your actors are enough powerful on the screen, and the story is taking the attention of the viewers, and also they can feel the emotion, because somehow we use the music to create some emotion, when very often we don't have enough capacity for this. So without music it's okay. Of course, it depends on the movie. But the sound design is something that is really, really important, and this is something that we are doing during the preparation of the shooting, and during the shooting, the important thing is from the sound recorders that this is something that I want from them, to collect as much as possible sound from this area. Authentic sound that we can use after on the sound design. So really this is very helpful, and after is just many weeks of trying different noisy sounds that we recorded during these two periods.
Maybe just one question about space, and then we can give it to the audience. You said that, we talked about how it's a small town, and then there is a small factory, the small sewing room, and there is COVID spreading because it is small and tightened, and they have to be there unprotected. But then there is a bus, there is a small apartment, everything is like tight, and it puts a pressure on the characters, so to say. And there is different space, like virtual space of YouTube videos of Misha, Iva's son. He tries to escape this reality, but it almost seems like another tight space of these virtual frames that his dreams are being, so to say, framed in YouTube, and his wish to escape to Germany. So I'm interested, like, a bit more about your thoughts about about the space in film, and what did you think before you shot the film about how this will look in terms of space?
I'm working already, let's say, 10 years with the same director of the photography. I think he's the best director of photography in Bulgaria. And for every film, we spent more than a year talking, discussing, watching movie, trying different option, shooting a lot, like a test shoots to prepare with the movie. We shot almost every episode and I'm playing all the roles. In order to try different options, and especially for this movie, we took the decision to have this kind of shooting between some frames, between the frames of the door, to feel somehow that these characters are closed in this reality, and for them it's difficult to escape from them. Of course, we doesn't want it to have this cliche of Eastern European film that is using some panel blocks where everything is ugly. This was also one of the reasons to choose Rudozem, because Rudozem for the exteriors, because Rudozem is a very nice city. It was built by zero in the 50s. There was no town before this. They built it from zero, and somehow the style of the buildings is, we call this some Stalin neo-Baroque or something like this, because it's very typical, and there is some beauty in this. So we wanted to tell the story in this way, but of course with some cinematic beauty, and I hope that we did it.
Yeah, I think it shows in the movie that the town is beautiful, but the reality is not. Yeah.
And this is stronger, I think.
Yeah. The drama is stronger when you. Questions from the audience, please. If you have questions for Stefan or comments.
So what I found really interesting was that the mining itself was a lot on the background. So you heard people talk about it, you heard it as an argument for why certain things happened, but you didn't see it except for sometimes the cable carts with the minerals coming by. And at some point, I think this was really nice because it was not too present. But at some point we see Micho driving away, and then we see him stop in this corner where she also walked down at a later point. But I couldn't figure out what is he doing in this corner. Why is he looking at the cards? Is he on his way to something? So I was wondering if you could maybe fill a bit in.
This was after he had this dramatic episode with his already ex-girlfriend. So he just wanted to drive and to escape. But of course, this was about the mines, all this line was something that we added later in the script because it was not in the script before the location scouting that we did. And when we did the location scouting and we discovered Rudozem, we saw that this is Rudozem, the place where there is this story of mines. So immediately we add all the elements connected with this. And there was also monuments of miners in the movie. And I think that this gave a lot some other dimension of the movie.
I think it added a really nice depth to the entire story taking place there, and also why the factory was so important, because it was a bit like this transition maybe to a new industry. But
and there was this beautiful big title that this factory is born by the Bulgarian-Sovietic friendship that is still existing there.
Okay, thank you very much for this movie. I found it really hyper-realistic, both on the side of how it showed the COVID period, but also on the side of labor or workers' rights in garment industry, especially as a person who was participating in researches in Serbia on garment industry. Somehow for me it was really interesting how some quotations which we could hear from workers are exactly the same as workers in Serbia would say. So it's really the same story. But we were commenting at some point that part 4, I think, was the only part that was not realistic. The part where the company admits and excuses to worker, that's something, I don't know, maybe it happened, but it sounds, from our experience, quite unrealistic. So I wanted you to comment on this.
From my point of view, it's realistic because the real story happens like this. It was the daughter of the seamstress who was the only who could defend her mother, and it became a big scandal in the media, etc. And the factory finally gave her excuses. There was interviews with the director of the factory, etc. So, as I said, our main inspiration is the real life. So that's why we did the film like it was in the real life.
It's a great movie, Stefan, and thank you, Ivan, for a great conversation, the way you lead it. I just want to add, I think that you know that, but also for other people, where this Made in EU label came from. Because before, Rana Plaza collapse happened in Bangladesh when a building collapsed and killed 1,200 workers. The garments that were produced in Europe were labeled made in Bulgaria, made in Serbia, made here and there. But then when Rana Plaza collapsed, they decided to brands, like not just one of them, to make that label made in Europe, to present it as you were convinced before you were faced with the research, as something that is sustainable, that is produced fair. So this is why, actually, when we started these country profiles in the region back in 2014, one of our main slogans was "Made in Europe doesn't mean that it's made fair." And thank you again from CCC side that you did make this public, in a film and enter, kind of introduce us to the reality that we are researching and the topic that we are focused on to the audience. We don't have opportunity to reach that often. Yeah.
Thank you. For me, is it working? For me, the good thing is that after the film that you mentioned, the World is Big, with Miki Manojlović from 2008. This is my second movie until now that won so many audience prizes. That means that somehow the story, the topic is talking and is understandable to the audience in different countries, including Spain, Germany, and Bulgaria, many other places.
That's very good to hear. Two things. When do we screen this in Brussels? Yeah. We'll make it happen. And
question to the world sales, the international distributor of the movie.
Fair enough. Secondly, do we know where the worker who inspired this story is today? Do we know what happened to her?
She went to Turkey.
Okay.
Because she was from Turkish minority.
Okay.
And finally, after all these events, she left and she went to some relatives in Izmir in Turkey.
Okay.
Somehow similar.
So my question is about with the son. The storyline was he did the mindless YouTube videos, and then he had a lot of anger, and then the anger kind of got resolved with the important video that he uploaded. And my question is, because in the end they went to Germany and they kind of escaped from the town. Is it what you want to say with the movie that the only solution is to get away, or that's a good solution, or that they don't have a chance to fight for better circumstances where they are? Or why did you, my main question is, why did you decide to end the movie with them going to Germany?
Because this is what happens the last 30 years. We lost 1/3 of our population without war, like in Yugoslavia. There was no war in Bulgaria, but from 9 millions we become 6 millions, even less now. And so this is something that, as already said, in this small town, these are the perspective: to stay there, to work there, to go to Sofia or other big town, or to emigrate. But because I told you already, I am from the optimists. The last 2 years, there is a new statistics. There is more Bulgarian coming back than leaving Bulgaria. Somehow the Bulgarians started to return to Bulgaria, and I think this is something really optimistic. So the pessimists and the realists started to come back.
Thank you.
About the unrealistic part and stuff like that, and why did you decide to end the movie with this? It seems in this story, whether it is based on real events or not, let's pretend that we don't know anything about it, that the social media is more powerful, and like individual action on social media turns out to be more powerful than traditional working class organizing, then let's say form a union. Mm-hmm. And we see in your film not just that the workers don't try to organize because they are afraid to lose their bonuses and their jobs, but they lost the basic solidarity. When they see that their fellow worker is, zero case of COVID, they discriminate and blame on her. And in the situation of pandemics, on the one side, you can say that it's understandable that they are being so discriminating towards her. But on the other hand, we also saw in real life many cases of real solidarity during COVID. So at the end, it is your filmmakers' decision to go on one side or the other side. So I'm interested in why do you think the working class has lost this solidarity and the faith in traditional organizing?
So I know very well, because we did a lot of researches in Bulgaria, I know very well that there is only few syndicates in this kind of factory, and they are on the biggest factories. In these small towns, for sure there is no syndicates, and also there is something that we can call contemporary feudalism. You have someone who owns everything, not only the factory, but also the shops. He's the guy who gives the money to the mayor, to the local governments, etc. So in this situation, it's really very difficult for the workers to organize themselves. The other thing is that talking about solidarity, we must talk about also something else. This is something that I call crisis consciousness. And the last, let's say, 15 or 10 years, we had a lot of crises. Political crisis, financial crisis, COVID crisis, military crisis now. So I can talk about this crisis consciousness that is all the time. And when we have this crisis consciousness, that means that the people feel very insecure about, in the same time, on the local and on the national society level. They feel they are scared about the future, and especially during the COVID, this was very strong. And in this situation, when you feel alone, when you feel insecure, this is a very old psychological mechanism. It's very helpful to blame someone, because this will explain everything. He or she is guilty. This happened because of her. And again, this story in this town of North Bulgaria happens absolutely the same. They broke her windows, there was aggression on the street. So because of this crisis consciousness, solidarity somehow disappeared in this place.
Maybe one more question from the audience, if we have one.
Thank you again for this wonderful movie. I was wondering, because something that is so striking is the severity of the main character. Like, she has very a placid face throughout the movie, despite the actual shock that comes from the fact that she loses solidarity. She's attacked in her home. She sees her kid being also attacked ad nominem, and we see that a strong, really feature of this woman. I was wondering why you took that angle and you didn't put more emotion to that, even if it's not a critique, because I find it very, very powerful. But I was just wondering what went into the creative mind.
But I believe that in the cinema there is a law, and this law is less is more. So this is something that I'm trying for many years with my actor, and believe me, this is much, much stronger. And when you have this amazing actress with this amazing face, Gergana Pletnyova, I told her, play only with your eyes. It's absolutely enough. So that's why. Less is more in everything. Music, directing, etc.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions, we've been talking for 45 minutes. That's less is more. So maybe it's enough. Thank you, Stefan, for your wonderful film and the discussion that we have just led. And thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.